It's like this. Students will not come to faculty offices as a general rule of thumb. Amen? I mean, some of us have better success at that than others. And some of us, you know, quite frankly, I was one of the ones that struggled with that. I would literally grab a student who was struggling, and I would literally take them by the hand, walk them all the way to my office so that they could get the help they need. And then by the time that I reached the door and I reached in my pocket for some keys, something magical happened and the student disappeared. I would turn around every time they were gone. And I was like, you know, there's just something intimidating about faculty offices to some students. For that matter, there's something intimidating about the traditional math classroom for some students. But what we have found is students won't come to your office for help, but they will go to that math lab all day long and put up a cup that means I need help because they're intimidated. It's a safe place. Everybody's doing it. Other students are doing it. It's just the way it is. So they walk in that math lab, they start working. I'm stuck. What's going on? Then somebody is there to help them. So anyway, let's move on. Well, let me talk about 1 minute about what I've learned out of mastery learning. A lot of people kind of have a philosophical problem with mastery learning. Mastery learning, by the way, is where they can do it multiple times if they need to. You keep the students working. My philosophy is the more work you get out of a student, the better. I've rarely heard anybody disagree with that. The more work you get out of a student, the better, especially in developmental. But how do we learn? I went through a scuba diving course with my daughter last year. And as I was going through that course, I really thought about what was going on. When did the real learning occur? When I put on that wetsuit and jumped in the water, right? People learn by doing. Students don't learn unless they're doing something. That's half the problem with the traditional system is they tend to kind of get disengaged and phase out and they're daydreaming and they're asleep or whatever. The real learning takes place when you start doing. Yes, I watched some videos. Yes, I listened to the instructor. Yes, we talked about stuff. But the real learning began when I jumped in the water. You learn by doing. But not only that, you learn by failing. Failing is a natural part of the learning process. Your students are going to fail. They're going to struggle. It happens. I struggled in scuba diving. In fact, my daughter's a better scuba diver than I am. At one point, I'm out there swimming around. The guy takes my regulator and hits me on the head with it. Wake up. You're failing. Then what would happen? We would get out of the water, talk about what happened, about what I did wrong, and then what would we do? Go back in the water to do some more. Very analogous to what goes on in that math lab. Students work. They reach a point at which they don't know what's going on. That's when they put the cup up. Somebody comes and helps. You got it? Okay. Then they get back to work. So really, this is how learning occurs. And yet, that very process that I've described often does not go on in college, okay, quite frankly. You don't know what your students have done because they haven't done homework. They're disengaged or they aren't doing it, you aren't sure what they're doing, so forth. Technology helps break that barrier, by the way. Right now at Chattanooga State, we're going through some growing pains, but you know what? Part of it is, a faculty member said to me yesterday, he goes, I don't think that really the students are doing worse. I just think we know what's going on now because we were able to track them. All right? Anyway, all right, let's talk about Chattanooga State. I've been there for a year, and I've got the under construction sign up, and we are in the process of building the program. It takes time. You can go through a year or two of struggling to build a program like this when you start doing something radically different. And quite frankly, at Chattanooga State, they did go through a couple years. At the same time that Cleveland State was doing their project, and had all these wonderful results. Chattanooga State was doing their project and they actually went backwards, okay? But I think there's a story there to be told because the college did not give up. They actually, after 2 years of struggling and failure, they actually redoubled their efforts to improving things for students. And they should be applauded for that. So developmental math, we have 2 algebra courses. We've integrated basic math throughout. And we have the Emporium model. We use my math lab. We do some things differently at Cleveland State. Chattanooga State is 3 times the size of Cleveland State. Chattanooga State is 3 times as large as Cleveland State. So we can do a little different things. We started offering mini lectures. So what's a mini lecture? It's a classroom that's set aside, and we gotta have a now showing poster outside the room, and here's topics. And students go in there freely to learn about topics they're struggling with. Here's a little mini lecture on graphing lines. Here's a little mini lecture on solving equations. What goes on in those mini lectures? Well, the instructor will start off with an overview, okay? 5-10 minutes explaining the topic. Then they'll do some examples. Then they'll get the students to do some examples. And then after 20-25 minutes, get back to work. Go back to the lab. You know, you got it now? Okay, you feel better? Okay, let's get back to work. Those really have been a really popular feature for us. We've got videos, we've got a course workbook. College math, we did 6 courses this fall. So we have redesigned 8 courses in 1 year. Okay? Contemporary math, college algebra, statistics, pre-cal 1 and 2, pre-cal 2, calculus 1. Here we're using the replacement model and the Emporium model. Okay? They still go to the math lab. We've retained some lecture. That's okay. And we're using my math lab, and we have developed a whole bunch of resources in those courses. So, you know, I don't have a lot of data on Chattanooga State. I've been there 1 year. We implemented a new developmental math program last spring. But by the way, that developmental math program had the best results they've ever had last spring. Intermediate algebra had a 65% passing success rate last spring under redesign. They had never had that high of a success rate, not even close. Okay? And that was actually almost 70%, because the 65% does not include the multiple completers. We had about 50 people get through both courses in 1 semester. Yes, sir? Could you give a brief explanation of what you mean by the Emporium model and the replacement model? Absolutely. The Emporium model is when you have a large lab. The Emporium is the large lab. So what you do is you put your resources within the course, you put those resources online, and then you have students access those resources. At Cleveland State and at Chattanooga State, we do a version of what I call the mini lab model. And what I mean by that, they still have a class meeting, but that class meeting functions like a miniature lab. But it still gives them the connection for someone to watch over them and connect with them. It gives them an instructor. They still have an instructor. They've still got an instructor. They've still got classmates. They've still got a meeting time. Okay? Then they go to the outside of class time. They go to the large computer lab. All right? Make sense? The replacement model is a combination of that, quite simply. Okay? You retain some class time, and that class time is a little more traditional, which is fine. And then you send them to the lab the rest of the time, okay? So, and those are the 2 things we do. Does that help?
So with the Emporium model, is it self-paced, or is there an external pace?
In developmental math, the Emporium model is self-paced, yes. But we prefer not self-paced, but rather minimum-paced. They can go faster, but yes, they can go a little slower if they struggle, but we still have the expectation that they actually complete the course. So we aren't into the malaise of, it's okay if